Do not attempt to adjust your set. This is a streaming freedom video bulletin. It cannot be stopped, and it is the only free voice left on the net. Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. While I rarely make GTA Online content anymore, I decided to make this video while researching what cars had been removed from the in-game websites that we are no longer able to purchase as of the GTA Mercenaries DLC. It's been reported there's anywhere between 186 to 200 cars that have been removed. Now, while I didn't count them because I've been working on this for the last 3 hours and just now starting to get it edited together, I wanted to try to provide some images as to what these cars are, to where those that are like me that can't remember what half of these are by the name alone might be able to get some idea as to exactly what Rockstar considers cars that nobody uses and has removed. Now, please keep in mind that while I am trying to be as accurate as possible, I am going by what the GTA forum said was removed, and the images provided is from the GTA Wiki. There could be some mistakes here and there. I'm doing the best I can to be as accurate as I can, but just please keep that in mind. With that said, let's see what has been removed. From Southern San Andreas Super Autos, the two-door category, the Peyote Gasser, Xeon Classic, Nebula Turbo, Issy Sport, Vamoose, the Futo, the Ruiner, the Romero Hearse, the Prairie, the Michele GT, the Fagaloa, the Hermes, the Retinue, the Tornado Rat Rod, the Mascaro Race Car, the Jester Race Car, the Pigalle, the Blade, the Picador, the F620, the Fusillade, the Penumbra, the Sentinel, the Rat Loader, the Swarcher, the Xeon Cabrio, the Xeon, the Gauntlet, the Vagero, the Issy. In the four-door category, the Seminole Frontier, the Dynasty, the Tulip, the BJ XL, the FQ2, the Serrano, the Habanero, the Cherubuck, probably not saying that right, the Streitzer, the Frankenstodge, the Jackal, the Oracle XS, the Schafter, the Surge, the Warner, the Regina, the Buffalo, the Buffalo S, the Tailgater, the Essaya, the Granger, the Rancher XL, the Ingot, the Intruder, the Minivan. I don't know if it had another name other than that. That's what was listed. The Premier, the Radius, the Stainer, the Stratum, the Washington, the Astrotope, the Fugitive, the Deleante. In the off-road category, the Helion, the Riata, the Seminole, the Kahari, the Rebel, the Sand King SWB, the Body, the Dune Buggy, the Injection, the Bison. In the luxury category, the Landstalker XL, the Patriot, the Contender, the Landstalker, the Grizzly, the Baller, and I wasn't certain which variant it meant, so it might be one or the other or both. The Cavalcade, and again I found two variants on this, so it could be one, the either, or both. I included them both in case. The Rakoto, the Felon GT, the Felon, the Oracle. In the motorcycle category, the Wolfsbane, the Esky, the Avaris, the Zombie Bobber, the Daemon, and it did say the biker version of the Daemon, so that's the picture I included, the Rat Bike, the Bagger, the Faggio Mod, the Faggio Sport, the Cliffhanger, the Enduro, the Nemesis, the Hakachu, the Innovation, the Sovereign, the Hot Rod Blazer, the Batty 81RR, the Ruffian, the Vader, the Blazer, the PCJ 600, the Sanchez, and it did say both versions, the Fagio, the Akuma, the Double T, the Hexer, in Legendary Motorsport in the two-door category, the Tigan, the Amorgon, the Zaruso, the Locust, the Neo, the Paragon R, however I believe it is a normal version, I could only find this picture, the S80RR, the Deviant, the Stafford, the Swinger, the Comet SR, the Hustler, the 190Z, the GT500, the Viserys, the Sylvestra, the SC1, the Cyclone, the Rapid GT Classic, XA21, the Torero, the Rustin, the GP1, the Raptor, the Lynx, the ETR1, the Tyrus, the RE7B, the 770, the 811, the Valeriere, the Brawler, the Coquette Blackfin, the Sterling GT, the Furore GT, the Jester, the Alpha, the Z-Type, the Stinger GT, the Stinger, the JB700, the Cheetah, the Entity XF, the Cosacanati Cabrio, the Coquette, the Fletcher, the Infernus, the 9F Cabrio, the 9F, the Comet, the Vaca, the Bullet, the Carmenizar, the Voltic, the Rapid GT Cabrio, the Rapid GT, the Serrano. Now in the 4-door category of Legendary Motorsport, the Stanford, the Revolter, the Raiden, the XLS, and that is both versions of it, the Roosevelt Valor, the Roosevelt. The upcoming pictures are listed as both versions, but I could only find one picture. The Costagnati 55, both versions. The Costagnati, both versions. The Baller LE, both versions. The Shafter LWB, both versions. The Exemplar. The Super Diamond. The Thrust in the bike category of Legendary Motorsport. Then in Warstock Cash and Carry we have the Varus, the Squatty, the Lifeguard, the Blazer Lifeguard, the Mesa, the Liberator, and finally in Benny's we have the Comet. And that is the end of the list, and again all credit for this list goes to MG Games 100 who provided it. And please keep in mind that there will be a link to this list in the description box down below if you'd like to check this out for yourself. And again, I tried to be as accurate as possible with this list of what it provided. I listed it exactly as the list did, and hopefully I found the correct vehicles on the website. But again, there could be some mistakes there. I tried to be as accurate as possible to at least give you an idea of what was removed. And if you know of any vehicles that was removed that was not shown on this list, or if I made a mistake, please feel free to leave it in the comment section down below. Again, I decided to compile this together after researching it because I thought it might be able to help some people. Because on all platforms, I'd really think twice about selling vehicles from now on. If you need space or you need money, you might want to save and bookmark the link to that list and double check it before selling anything, because especially if you are somebody that likes collecting rare cars or cars in general, the last thing you want to do is end up selling one of these vehicles, forgetting or not thinking that it is one of the ones removed, and then when you go to get it again, come to find out that now you can't. Now, for those of us that are on last gen and PC, we're pretty much screwed because we don't have access to GTA Plus. Even if I had access to it, Rockstar wouldn't be getting my money. But in any case, with two of the vehicles on this list, the Romero Hearse and the Lifeguard, if a player has, as long as that hasn't been changed, if a player in your session has one of those two vehicles, they can drive it to certain areas that they spawn in, and they can spawn that vehicle for you. The Romero Hearse will spawn at the various churches, and the Lifeguard will spawn down near a I think there's a lifeguard station. It'll spawn down near the beach, Del Piro or Vespucci, whatever the hell that's called down there, but right down there near Del Piro, that beach area. Drive around there and you can find them spawned if a player has it and drives it down there. Now, and this is just a suggestion, I don't know, so don't, just take this with a grain of salt. As far as the motorcycles go, now several of those motorcycles, I don't know if all of them, but I've recognized the name on some of those. If you own the mechanic in the biker clubhouse, when they bring their bikes in for the customer and you can buy those, some of those I do remember seeing them there. You might be able to buy them there that way still if they didn't remove that option. I don't know. Don't quote me on that either way. and they could remove it in the future. But if you're somebody that you don't really have the money, then don't buy it just because I said that. There's no way to know either way. So I'm, give some helpful advice, but be mindful of your money, because Rockstar wants you to spend it foolishly so that you might be more apt to get shark cards. Now, if you're on next gen on the E&E versions, then one way you might be able to get these, and again, this is just going off of what I've heard because I don't have that, so I can't say for certain, but I believe that if a player has one of these vehicles and they take it to the LS car meet, they can make a duplicate to sell to you. So that might be a way that you're able to get it besides having to have GTA Plus. So I hope that this video can help those out that need it. I've seen a lot of videos that just are listing the vehicles by name, but the problem is it's really hard to remember what half of these are. I know it is for me, but I often will recognize them when I see them. And again, as I was researching this, I decided I'd make that video to help people that were having trouble with it, especially those in my community, as I know I do have some GTA Online players still here. But please remember, I don't make GTA Online content very often, so I'm not a good source of information. I just made this to try to help out those that I could. Thank you for watching the video. This has been a Streaming Freedom Video Bulletin. Peace out.